Good evening and happy Monday, everybody. I hope you all had a holy and safe weekend. I managed to get a flat tire this weekend, but fortunately was able to get the spare on and get it patched. No worse than it absolutely needed to be. Um, I've been thinking about something for a while, and I think it might be ready to come out into the open. But just a reminder that sometimes I use these live streams to muse aloud about things I'm not 100% sure on, and hopefully opening that up for a little bit of discussion. And it's called kind of based on an idea that I got from the book "The Religion of the Day." You can remember that was the one we did the live book club on a Monday night back in October, I think, and it had a very interesting essay in there on catching the diseases of the world there, and one of the central ideas that we can pull out of that is this idea that the church is always going to be in a position to offer the world what the world doesn't currently have, and what the world needs to be more balanced or healed or whole, however you want to think about that. And you can see this, there's probably multiple historical examples that we could come up with, but this idea that the church is what offers to the world, a certain corrective of a certain salvation. You can see that in the earliest centuries of Christianity, and you read all of the historical books, and the historical books are like, well, there was always a mix of people inside of the earliest Christian communities, but the people that it had the most impact on and the most effectiveness with were women and slaves. And then you read a little further in these history books, and it's like, well, this was an opportunity for them, people who were of a, we'll say, a lower social status in the Roman world, to experience what it's like to be a full member and a participant in something. That was at least what the historians look at there, and I think there's something to that. The old Roman ideal of the pater familias, governing his household, and always having the last absolute word on things. That idea seems to need to be redeemed to me. We don't, I don't think the Christian conception of marriage would give the fathers of families a power of life or death over household slaves or children or that sort of thing. There needs to be a certain tempering and adjustment to that. And in the early centuries of the church, that was provided for the people of the Roman Empire. That was kind of a spur for its growth there. So it's a fairly well. I don't know. That's the standard explanation of the early church that you'll find in all sorts of history textbooks, and I think there's something to it. Even though it seems a little silly to us now because we've been living in the fruits of what the early church accomplished for centuries now, and it just kind of seems like old hat. Um, so let's imagine that it's not AD 26 anymore, but it's AD 2026. We look at our current circumstance here, and one of the things that we talk about frequently on this channel is people having a hard time accepting, we'll say, eternal truths and standards by which to live by. People having a hard time accepting boundaries and authority, and just sort of a generalized spirit of rebellion that a lot of people seem to be captured in. And some cultural commentators will look at the various forms of what's commonly called wokeism now as forms of zombie Christianity. That some of the compassion and acceptance, which was rather novel and needed in the Roman Empire times, has now become a little rank and overgrown, and it's turned into a form of zombie Christianity. Zombie because it's cut off from the head. It's not submitted to the Roman pontiff or any bishops for that matter, and it's instead just sort of wandering around mindlessly, causing all sorts of trouble there. And if we're going to take Monsignor Shea seriously, that there's going to be a cure offered for the world, well, the first thing that happens is that the world gets the church gets infected with this disease of lack of respect for authority and boundaries, endless novelty and experimentation, and the only rule being that you have to accept absolutely everybody who is accepting absolutely everybody. And if somebody's not accepting absolutely everybody, then they're the only ones who are excluded. Well, the church certainly got infected by that, I would say in the 1970s. And we might be in some places the process of finally getting over the last remnants of that spirit there. And, even though there is, say maybe in the flood there was some things that were unworthy that were washed away in the flood. There were certain things that were kept, and what was actually kept through all of these decades of turmoil? Well, we certainly kept the hierarchical constitution of the church. There's still the Roman pontiff and the College of Bishops. There are still the presbyters and the deacons attached to their bishops. While some people had recommended getting rid of it, canon law remains a thing and in effect. Thanks be to God for that. And, especially when I was in my early formation, I would hear people quote Pope Benedict all the time about the dictatorship of relativism. That was one of the crises that the West was facing at this time, and this idea that, well, we do still have eternal truths, we still do have things that we are bound to live by, and this is not something that we can just dispense with at our own whims. And that's kind of what the world needs right now. The world needs that message there of law, order, justice, hierarchy, boundaries. And as far as I can tell, the church still has all of those things. Maybe it doesn't have them quite as boldly and vigorously as we might, but the church still has this on offer here. And so while it seems to me that in the very earliest centuries, the right hand of Christ, the merciful hand, and the accepting hand was what the world needed. In the time that we find ourselves in, I wonder if the left hand of Christ, that which gives out judgment, draws lines, and casts out that which is not worthy. Wonder if that, in our day and age, isn't what the church is now offering to the world for the healing of the world, for the rebalancing of the world, for the salvation of the world. So that's what I think I've been seeing. And somebody wants to pop on here and talk to me about that. The link has been posted, and where it looks like we've got average viewership, so I don't think the channel is under attack right now. But do be careful, or you will end up in my sermon. The lava lamp is in fact on, and everything that you are observing is just a trick of the lighting, basically. All right, we've got Mark, who probably doesn't have a single word of argument against my my opening statement here, and we've got friend of the channel, Kirk. Hello, Kirk.
Hey, I was liking what you were talking about. I got some headphones, so that way my mic's working today.
All right, I love it when the microphone's working. That means we can actually hear what you've got to say.
So, yeah, Father, I really like what you were saying about the point about law and order, and it kind of reminded me. So, are you familiar with the work by Haidt and moral foundation theory? Because from my understanding of it, basically, conservatives are psychologically predisposed to prefer order compared to liberals, and liberals are more predisposed to prefer compassion. And this is basically scientifically verified as far as any psychological theory can be scientifically verified. So like, do you think that kind of integrates with what you're talking about, that we need to have the psychological balance?
I mean, I think there's a certain, we can notice, certain tendencies towards people's, you know, passions and appetites and that sort of thing. Then that, you can probably pretty reliably measure those sorts of things over groups there. But there is also, I think a spiritual element, and that's tied in with formation that shouldn't be ignored, right? And so, and I could use myself as an example. I've got a rather disagreeable temperament. I can hide a lot of that by the fact that I'm also rather conscientious, and therefore, I was taught this is how you behave in public, and these are, like you shouldn't just go around and be a jerk to everybody all the time. And I was like, okay, well, those are the rules. I can follow that. But part of my seminary formation was like, well, like you're gonna have to deal with people, and you're gonna have to be able to treat them in a compassionate manner. And actually, here's some tools on how to do that. And so that was very useful to get those tools, and they've they've proven useful there. So even though I have a rather disagreeable and orderly temperament, it doesn't mean that I can't take advantage of some of the tools and ways of behaving compassionately when at a funeral, or somebody's in deep distress and they need that kind of sympathy and comfort. As much as I'm able to give it to them, I can manage that. And so when we look at kind of the opposite of father sites, right? Like maybe somebody who's very compassionate and not very orderly in their thinking and temperamentally, we would want to give them some formation that kind of emphasizes, some of those boundaries right there. And they will have different struggles than father sites will have, because father sites, it's like the boundaries aren't a struggle for me. It's like not being too rigid on them and impermeable when maybe there should be, a little bit of flex in them. It is actually a much bigger struggle for me. So, certainly there is that predisposition to it, but somebody who's got a rather compassionate temperament that's not high in conscientiousness could still, you know, grasp and appreciate and understand the truth there, and benefit from it, right? Like really, it can help somebody who's got that temperament out stay away from trouble a lot. They're not just going to agree with everybody constantly. They'll have a few, important moral principles and lines that hopefully they won't cross, and that can be it's a real advantage to be able to do that. So, there's probably, when you average it out across populations, you can probably see some tendencies there. But, with proper formation, there can be, somebody who's got, they'll end up expressing Catholicism maybe a little bit differently than I do, but they can still be a part of the body there. Just maybe not the same part of the body that I am.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think Haidt's point is that you can't overcome them. It's just that they are general predispositions that, with proper training, you can sort of manage in a healthy way. At least that's from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just didn't want to be overly reductive in playing with those ideas, because you got to really, dig into the details before you can figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about you, Fozer, is that you know how to control a conversation and not let bad faith actors take over, while also, showing that Christ-like love and compassion.
You just shouldn't trust people too much on the internet. So, but yeah, there's no need to be cruel about it. But I like having good conversations. So,
So,
Yeah.
so
Thank you, Greg.
I did have some questions about Catholic theology, if that's okay, unless Mark has something to say.
Mark talks enough on this channel. You give me the questions on Catholic theology.
So, to my understanding, Catholics believe, or you were saying that at least in some versions of Catholicism, there's a form of what might be in modern day terms called compatibilism, but basically it's the idea that God's knowledge of the future is compatible with free will because our experience of free will is not superseded by God's foreknowledge. Because
We don't usually use the term compatibilism. That's a little too 17th and 18th century for me. But yes, God's freedom. Uh, Basically, He just uses our freedom to accomplish His will. Um, he makes our freedom as a part of His plan, and if you read really good authors writing about their own creative process, you get the sense that they're not really in control of what their characters are up to. They
Yep.
and they'll be like, we're writing this, and they'll see, oh gosh, this is exactly what this character is going to do, and it's going to be a disaster. You know, and then they can't like stop it. Otherwise, they would ruin the book that they're writing. And God does this in a much more perfect and sublime way than any human author is able to accomplish it. But it is, it is, it's well. I'll tell you a story. I wanted to write on predestination and free will for a paper in seminary, and one of my professors didn't let me. He said one of two things is going to happen: either A, it's going to be really short and straightforward and basic, or you will get so lost in the details that I won't be able to come and find you, because it gets to be a really like hairy and complex subject extremely quickly. And so I've just decided I want to paddle around in the shallows rather than, you know, uh, diving into the depths of those things. But, you could just accept that that's true on faith and then wait for the understanding to come later. And that's actually a really good way to do things when you've got a reliable source there. It's like you just, if somebody's, teaching you how to code, let's say, and they teach you a really important rule, and then maybe you're looking at some of their code and they break one of those rules, you might just have to say, what did you do? You broke the rule. It's like, well, I know the rule well enough to know when I can break it myself. And when you've learned how to code in C like a real man, well enough, then you can do the same thing. But right now I just need you to trust me to just keep to this rule.
Yeah. So my question was specifically related. So there's an idea I've heard attributed to William Lane Craig, and not saying that Craig's a great guy, but I think I am curious if this specific view is compatible with Catholic theology, which is that basically the way it works is God has foreknowledge of all the possible ways a human can act, and so the way to reconcile free will with divine foreknowledge is that saying that humans can act in multiple ways, and God has knowledge of what would happen if humans acted in every possible scenario.
So he's a Molinist then.
Yeah, is that compatible with Catholicism?
Well, as far as I know, and maybe I can be corrected on this, that's never been condemned by the Catholic Church, Molinism. But I'm a Thomist, which has a little more, centrality of God's agency in these things, and so I don't, treat God as if he's an extraordinarily skilled gambler who can chart out the probabilities of your actions here. It's a little more mysterious, a Thomistic way of just saying, "Yep, God's completely free and causes everything, and you're also completely free." But you can only cause things that are within the horizon of your agency. That's a nice way. Isn't that just such a beautiful way of putting it? A horizon lets you know that we're doing some real deep thinking when we're using words like that. Um, so yeah, as far as I know, Molinism has never been condemned, but I don't hold to it. I just stick with Thomas Aquinas, and that gets me everywhere I need to go. So
Yeah, that's fair, but the reason I'm sympathetic to it is A, because it would preserve a form of what you might call libertarian free will, in a sense that it would preserve the ability of the idea that you could have done otherwise. And B, it seems like it's more scientific because basically the majority of physicists, as far as I can tell, believe in indeterministic quantum physics.
Okay. Well, neither of those are particularly high priorities for me.
Just seems like there's easier ways to get around that by never
Yeah, it's
thinking
well,
about it
it's
again.
this is the thing that like oh man, I watched a Veritasium video, and sometimes they've got some really interesting things. Like when they're talking about zippers, they're well within their competence there, and like they just tell me all about the mechanics of how zippers work, and I can enjoy the video. Um, but there was just this one where like the channel founder was just like, "Oh yeah, well I don't believe in free will," and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like." Like
It's such a
you're
dumb
going
thing
to
to say.
use this model, right? Because that's all science can manage for us is to produce a model, right? And you're going to like look at the method by which that model is produced and then assert that that's how the whole universe works right there. And you're going to do that, not on some, silly tertiary thing, but something that you direct against disproving something that you directly experience, right? Like the
Right.
the sense of your own agency and your experience, and it's just like that is such a backwards way to look at things. And so, like anytime
Yeah.
somebody argues that something's going to be more scientific, I immediately get a little bit suspicious of it because these people who are super into science, sometimes they're actually good scientists, but a lot of times they're just kind of morons, and they do stupid things like deny free will, and it's like, ah, man,
The
that gets me
concept
all
of free
fired up.
will couldn't exist in your brain if you didn't have it. It's that simple. But this is I put this clip on last night from Jonathan Peugeot talk, and Jonathan's just like talking about how tired he is of talking to materialists because they always do this one particular performative contradiction, and it's not that one, but it's the same. It's the same thing, right? Where they make a statement about teleology that denies the existence of teleology at the same time, which is obviously just bad logic. It's bad reasoning, it's bad rationality, it's bad inference. It's bad all of those things at the same time. And these are the same people that are like, oh, science, logic, reason. And I'm like, you're bad at this stuff. Like you're objectively just bad at it. I don't know why, if that's the thing, you're screwed. Like your life is over. It's so bizarre to me that they do that. And yeah, to infer something about the world, because it's an infer. They keep saying they're making logical arguments. I'm like, that's an inference. That not all inferences are logical. And not all inferences are correct. So they make these inferences about things that it's impossible for them to have information on enough to make an inference. And I'm like, are you okay? Like the way the whole world works, like how could you determine if your own actions were deterministic or the result of free will? The answer is you can't. And I often just wonder if these people have never like worked at a job or something, right? Because one of the things that happens, so my first job was UPS, right? So I mean, I move packages. That's what you do, right? They put you in the truck, you take a package, you put it on the belt. Not hard, right? Not hard. Great job, by the way. Kirk should go to UPS and work there. It's fantastic. 4 hours a day, you'll be fine. And max. They never run 4 hours in a shift. So they just tell you, here's the truck. Try to get the labels up on the belt for the sorters. And then they leave you alone. And that's where your free will kicks in, right? And to the extent your will is not free, you've agreed to go work for them in exchange for money. You've agreed to do roughly what they told you. So that part's not free, but it was negotiated by you. So it was free because you could have said no. Right? And so, okay, so I've agreed to be an employee with this company. That decision was my free will. Okay. And then they point at a truck and they say, go in that truck, unload the packages, and try to put the labels up for the sorters. That's it. Unload it as fast as you can, unless the belt gets shut down. That's pretty much the extent of the rules for the unload. That's what you get. So I go in the truck and I unload the truck faster than any sorter could ever sort because I'm good and I'm quick. And all the labels are up.
16 anyway.
It took me a while. Huh?
You were at 16 anyway. You're an old man now.
15. I was working at 15, sir. 16? It's too late to work when you're 16. You're already ruined. You're already weak. You're already nothing. Yeah. So anyway, and I worked the twi shift. So most of the people worked were in high school, and they would go there a little late because high school got out just a little too late. So they'd get in a little late. UPS didn't really care. And they'd work the day shift. I worked the twi shift, 6 to 12. That was, it's really 6 to 10 or whatever. But the how of unloading the truck was really up to me. And that's more free will, right? And so when people can't think that way because they think, oh, you have to have a job because you have to have money. Like, yeah, but you get a great deal of, a job's not the only way to get money. So that's just wrong. Like, you're bad at
you could go rob a bank. That'll get you money.
You could start a business. You could, right? You could, there's tons of ways to get money. And I am young, and I'm very good at Tetris. Anyway, that is already wrong. And then they don't understand constraint. So they think, well, if I'm constrained, I'm not free, and therefore it's not free will. And it's like, I don't know what definition of free you're using, but you don't have one clearly, which I can infer from the available information because it's pretty easy to infer from that information. And they're just not understanding it. Like, all the jobs I've had, the bosses have said, go get this done. They haven't told me how. Not that there weren't a few bosses that didn't nitpick things and say, well, I don't like the way you did that. And I'd be like, well, that's too freaking bad. I got the work done, but like free will is so obvious that to deny it. And again, of course, it's irrational, illogical, unreasonable, and backwards inference to state that you don't have free will. That just it proves that you're unable to think clearly about things.
Well, I was arguing exactly for free will, and so what prompted this was recently I was reading this paper on PhilSci Archive about the Born rule and free will, and was using this idea that because the Born rule in quantum physics is an example of probability, where the long-run frequency of a certain outcome of measurement, you will measure a certain quantum system, you can choose between multiple ways to actualize quantum potentiality, and this is what gives you free will. I'm not.
I think there's. So Kirk, I just think there's a bit of a overcomplication here. So let's here's the way I think about it, right? If somebody's conclusions lead them to deny free will, then I know they have bad premises in there. It's usually materialism, but there might be another bad premise that can do that there. What I think is actually a much more useful thing to do is to just take free will as one of your premises, right? It's like, look, I experience this when it's, if somebody's, violating my agency and restricting it unjustly, I get very upset by it.
Yeah.
And like the whole world, right? Like the criminal justice system, contracts, negotiations of all sorts, like employment, marriage, friendship, all of this stuff only works if free will is real, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it just seems much simpler to just take that as your premise and like not worry about how it works.
It's backwards reasoning. It's completely backwards reasoning to not just observe the world, notice free will everywhere, and then say,
That's
well,
it. That's
we
one
need
of
an
your premises.
explanation. No, we don't.
Yeah, I agree that we should start with the axiom that free will exists because it's introspectively observable, that how it works might be integrated with a vision of quantum indeterminism, like with regards to the
It
Born rule.
doesn't work anyway, and it wouldn't matter how it worked because there's nothing you can do about how it works. So any mechanism you come up with for how it works, which is a ridiculous frame, because again, you're working backwards, is irrelevant because it's just theories and inference of something that doesn't need theorizing or inference that can never be of any use to you except waste your time. Like it can definitely waste your time and steal your life, and it will for sure.
And like the way it works is that the soul moves the body, and part of the body is the brain, and so the soul has some sort of very subtle, probably entirely unobservable influence on the most delicate parts of us, and we wouldn't have any way of studying it directly. It's sort of like a Heisenberg uncertainty moment, right? Where like any situation where you would be able to measure, like you couldn't make an experiment that would measure free will because like the tools of measurement would be so intrusive that you would destroy the human being before you could measure these things.
Right.
Like I don't know if we could ever have a brain scanner that can operate at that level of fidelity to watch individual neurons fire.
But it doesn't matter, Father. I mean, the bottom line is the reason why these nitwits, and they are nitwits, they're not midwits. That would be a huge upgrade. It's too much to hope for. The reason why the nitwits come up with this is because they're applying science. Well, science operates under constraints explicitly. And so any experiment of science is designed to find determinism. It can't find non-determinism, and it can't find free will, because by the dictates of the scientific method, you are already constrained, and therefore determinism is the only possible answer, right?
Well, I mean, the majority of quantum physicists are indeterminists, as far as I can tell. The majority subscribe to the Copenhagen interpretation, which is a non-deterministic theory now. So you're saying that science operates under determinism, but the main paradigm of science in
which is
21st
why they
century
can't fix it, right?
Right.
Like
Which is why they can't fix it. And that's not science. That's quantum physics. And no one likes quantum physics for exactly this reason, because it's unscientific. And that is the basic conclusion of quantum physics, is that quantum physics is unscientific. You can't do experiments on it. And that's how you get nonsense garbage like string theory, is that no one could refute them. But it just turns out Brian Greene and his retarded friends are retarded, and they were wrong. And now they've been shown to be wrong, and they will continue to be shown to be wrong. And all other non-deterministic methods, Schrodinger, all of that stuff is explicitly, clearly unscientific. There's nothing wrong with that. It just shows you the limits of science. Oh, we really don't know how anything works at this layer of reality. That's correct. Well, so what? You don't need to anyway.
It's like
no
the
one
best
else
they can get.
ever needed to.
The best they can get is probability. They can't get exactitude. Which we're just talking about a couple of neutrinos here, right? Like probability is good enough. They're so small. Like what are they going to do?
Well, as long as you don't talk about one neutrino, probability is great.
Yeah.
Right. And that's always the confusion, right? Always the confusion is, this rule that we derive from looking at a large number of things doesn't hold true for a small number of things and never works for a single of those things. But like, I feel like we already knew that from from basic arithmetic, which we do, by the way. But these people are hell-bent on rediscovering this lesson over and over and over again, apparently. And it's a little annoying, to be honest, but that's where we are. So we better get used to listening to these clowns or ignoring them, which is what I just ignore them all. This was all, the problem is, Kirk, everything you're talking about was known about in the 30s. They have advanced 0% since the 1930s. Do you want to listen to a bunch of losers who are just recapitulating something that somebody much smarter than them who lived almost 100 years ago came up with? Boring.
Mark, that's getting a little personal because I'm just recapitulating what Thomas Aquinas said. So I just don't want you to talk like that.
That's fair. But you're clear about it. You're like, I just follow Thomas. These guys are pretending like we're using probabilistic, determinism to determine that there's no It's like, oh, you mean like Einstein and Bohr and those guys who already said all this. That's your big insight. Your big insight is that, oh, nothing's changed and they were right, but you get to put your name on it and sound smart. That's wonderful. You sound like a real stand-up guy at that point.
Yeah. So that's what we think, Kirk.
I mean, fair enough, but I mean, it seems as though quantum physics has some practical applications in things like quantum computing and GPS with regards to general relativity and stuff like that.
Not so far. They keep saying it will. This is the trick. You listen to these guys super careful, especially like the robot and AI guys, right? Elon Musk, the go to Mars, who also made a prediction of electric cars that wasn't true. It's always in the future. It's always like, well, once we hit this, all of these other things will happen. And we never hit this ever. I'm just going to tell you. Like, I've been on this earth a long time.
Fusion power is only 20 years away.
Well, my favorite one is nuclear fission. Nuclear fission was far older than I thought because there were commercials from the 1940s advertising that it was 5 years away, and we still don't have it, right? And every time they announce something, you read the actual data and you go, well, I see that you have progressed from using twice as much energy. And so you're losing half as much energy as you were before in the process of, quote, creating energy, which if it takes more energy to create the energy than the energy you created, which is what your paper says, then maybe you didn't actually create any energy. And while you may have cut the distance by half, I think you should listen to the ancient Greeks because there's that whole thing about you get halfway to the wall every time. You never reach the wall. And that's basically all they've been doing with nuclear fission or fusion. Fusion. I always get those two.
Fission we've done.
Yeah, fission's cool too. But that one works. That's no problem at all. And no wonder why. There's an asymmetrical there's an asymmetry there. Of course it works. Of course that's the right way to do. Of course the opposite won't work.
Just watched an old Muppet movie, Free Willer Muppets. Well,
Muppets.
You might have Muppets on this stream right now. You should consider the possibility that there are Muppets even on this stream, and we don't have to talk about free will the whole night long. I have considered it. I considered it just this week when I went to confession, and I concluded I am a Muppet. I must confess my sins.
Oh, you know what I saw today, Father? Just a few short minutes ago, a TV show, like an actual TV show, and at
like
the
broadcast.
end of the TV show, it was broadcast. This is a very old TV show, of course. But at the end of the TV show, the main character ends up in this little thing you may have heard of. I don't know if you're familiar with these. They're called confession booths. And I was just like, Sarah and I were both like, well, you don't see that anymore. It's like, this is great.
Actually,
really good.
It was in Daredevil season 1, and like throughout the Netflix Daredevils, because he's canonically a Catholic.
Right.
And it just warmed my heart because it was like one of the first 2 episodes of season 1. So I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. Matthew Murdoch goes into confessional and says, "Bless me, Father. It's not for something that I have done, but something that I'm going to do." And you know what the priest says? That's not how this works. And I'm like, yes, correct. That's not how this works. You can't confess ahead of time.
Boondock Saints. Boondock Saints had confession. I love that movie.
The Boondock Saints had all sorts of stuff in that movie.
Boondock Saints are the best. Same actor is in Nefarious there. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was well, I was hearkening back. It was so funny too. I was thinking about this, the Robert B. Parker stuff. He really wrecked the world. Like what a disaster. But
remind me who he is.
He did Spencer for Hire.
Okay, more detail needed.
You don't know the Spencer for Hire stuff? Oh wow! So that was a TV show. It was Robert Urich and Avery Brooks as Hawk. It's great stuff. Set in Boston. So the reason why I love it is because I'm like, I know where that is. I know where that is. I know where that is. I know where all this stuff is. I've driven down that street. I pulled that exact move in my car when I was young as I could, and I had seen this show, this TV show. So Spencer is a private eye, and he, like his best friend and the guy he usually gets to kind of help him out is a hitman, a professional hitman, and he is a former cop who left the police, of course.
The Spencer's a former cop, or the hitman?
Yeah, Spencer's a former cop.
Okay,
and he sort of skirts the line. All of his clients are typically super wealthy, and he can quote poetry, and he cooks for the girlfriend and all that. And it's a girlfriend. It's a mess. It's a mess. It's a total mess. So he's like this shadowy in between figure bridging, and I was like, oh, this whole idea of bridges and how dangerous they can be. Like you don't want to bridge certain things, like in electricity, for example.
I was just going to say. Yeah, it's just you want to make sure that you're pretty careful with that alternating current. When you got
right
240 amps going through.
Even the direct current, yeah, like you get kicked by a 12-volt car battery, man. You're not gonna be happy. I've been there. You're not gonna be happy. You're gonna notice it's not gonna be a pretty day for you. So yeah, you gotta be careful with that. But they bridge all these things in that show. And I mean, he's got some other stuff. Does he do Death and Paradise? He's got another whole series that he's probably got a ton. I haven't even read Parker's stuff. I just like the TV show. But that idea of somebody bridging those sorts of things. But that show, there was all this corruption. All the mob guys were tied in with the church and used the church. So there's church all over the place in that show. There's confession, there's everything. I'm like, man, the 80s were much better time for this sort of thing. And then when you start to engage, so I am planning on doing it might be our last history with Adam, just because Adam's having a baby and
moving on. It was having a baby. I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah. He's in California right now, so for work. And they're having fun. Yeah, I get some pictures from him in California. I would fly out there, but I absolutely can't. I'm
Holy Week's coming. You're busy. I get it.
There we go. Yes, that's why. So that's exactly it. You nailed it. So we're going to talk about Otto von Bismarck, and then what I just found out from our good friend Gustav's is that from a video that someone did. Basically, he sent it to me, and Bismarck goes after the Catholics. Everybody else
the culture conf. Yeah.
After the Catholics, right? The first culture war we'll call it modernity just because people are dumb. It was Otto von Bismarck. And I'm just like, why is every bad civilization destroying act tied to Catholic defiance always? I'm just keep running into it. And I'm like, I'm sensing a pattern. I'm feeling a pattern. I feel the spirits of a pattern. Like, what is going on?
Yes, well, just make sure that there isn't any of that in you, Mr. Lefebvre.
No, there's none of that in me. I just stick to the truth, and the church has got a lot of work to do. I'm just saying, a lot of work.
Yeah, well, hey, no suitable candidate will be turned down. So.
Dog-headed forever.
Okay, so, but the show you were talking about with in Boston,
yeah,
there was it blew the world up. You had mentioned that.
Yeah, because of what he's bridging. So you've got a private eye, who's a former cop but kind of washed out. His best friend is a hitman.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a relationship with the cops. But he's got to mediate the relationship with the cops with his best friend because they're always trying to nail him because they know he's a hitman. You know, he's a high-paid assassin, basically. And a lot of the tension too on a few of these things comes between them, which is even more interesting. They have to make real tough moral decisions. It's a very moral show too, which is interesting. It's all moral questions. I think that's why I have an easy time navigating all this stuff, because if you just watch particularly sci-fi, but even just shows from the 70s and 80s and 60s and westerns and all that, right? Because I absorbed all of that when I was younger. You would understand how to navigate all these moral and ethical issues because it's in the stories you're hearing about or seeing on TV or whatever. And the other problem is nothing like that kind of a hybrid exists. There are no tough guy PIs who are boxers, because he's also a boxer, who also read all of Spencer's favorite poem. It's also he's named after, right? And all this other stuff, and no high society, and can navigate that. And like that just doesn't
It's
exist.
Buckaroo Banzai all over again.
It's a very
he's a test pilot,
right,
brain surgeon, rock star.
Right. Super hybrid.
Yeah, it's like Superman getting new powers as the plot demands.
It's Superman, Batman, Catwoman hybrid. It's the same sort of thing. Yeah, you have all these things that aren't compatible being squished together, and I think that's where we've really failed. Is we've failed to form people with. There are certain things that can't ever go together, no matter what. Like that seems to be the problem, is that nobody has a sense for that anymore. And they're just trying to smash random things together and then name it, chimera indeed, and name it and call it a day. I mean, it's interesting too, because if any of these people who quote studied the classics actually understood what they had studied in the classics, they would know better. They wouldn't have, like,
right. It's like they have
warnings against these things.
They have actual characters in classical literature, right? And so I did a little Hamlet discussion just last week, right? And I brought up the point that's like, if Othello and Hamlet had switched places, both of those plays would have been, Hamlet would be one act long, because Othello would just be like, okay, I'm supposed to whack my uncle. All right, boom, whacks the uncle, becomes king, does whatever he wants now. Like real simple. He's a straightforward man who got manipulated by somebody who was smarter than him and that he trusted, and it wasn't a good idea, right? Meanwhile, if Hamlet had been in Othello's place, he would come up with an elaborate scheme, to test her loyalty, right? And then it could actually be a very long play, because Iago and Hamlet would just keep on scheming against each other. So that might actually be a good story right there. But, Othello but anyway, the point is that, like, yeah, Hamlet just broods a lot and doesn't take action, and that's how he gets in trouble. And Othello doesn't brood enough and just takes action immediately, and that gets him in trouble. And that's what people are like, is they have their things, and it's not like there can't be any moral growth, but your baseline, you're never going to get that far from it. It's just you can't do everything, right? Like you can't be a rock star, computer programmer, brain surgeon, test pilot, and work in a nursing home. It's just like, you don't have time for that.
Right.
That's why God created lots of different types of people.
Well, and you need them all, and you need the people that are doing that to be equally valued, and you can't do that in materialism. This is why materialists love socialism, because it solves that problem, right? It solves the value problem. I saw somebody, I saw somebody flipping out on Twitter the other day because they were like, oil is $150 a barrel in the West and $100 a barrel in the East. It's never been $50 apart before. And I'm like, well, yes, it has. You just don't know how to read and can't look things up. And B, this isn't unusual. And C, he's like, it's a single commodity with different values around the world. And I'm like, that's called a day that ends in Y. That's called a market. Like
you could be in the exact same location. Let's say a bazaar in Mexico, and like a piece of fruit for me is going to cost more than a piece of fruit for the locals because they don't have the prices posted, and they know that I'll just pay for it.
Right. Well, or if you go up and you're friendly and you smile and you try to speak some broken Spanish at them, and I don't, you're paying less and I'm paying more. So and people just don't. But that is how a market markets. Like that is the definition of a market, is that things don't have one universal price. They have one universal price. You don't have a market by definition. But and because we're all postmoderns, we read a story, maybe some Shakespeare, which I've only read one of ever. I didn't like iambic pentameter at all, so I didn't read any more. But they want to fix it. They want to perfect it. They want to find a way around the flaw of the character. It's like, no. These stories are designed to teach you that these people exist, so that when you encounter them, you recognize them and take appropriate action. The appropriate action is never fix them. That's not an appropriate action to take with another human being. Help them maybe, but fix them, and no. That's there's that whole joke about, oh, I can fix her. No, you can't. You can't. And on the other side, I can fix him. No, you can't. That's not the right thing to do ever. But that's the results of this postmodern idea.
Yeah. So your point about this TV show then is that this cop, boxer, high society intellectual is a guy who just can't exist.
Right.
But you could, but in a TV show, you can have him do all those things, because
it's look, I love that TV show. It's fantastic. But we've been watching. So the other TV show, the one I was watching earlier, is called Stingray, which I love Stingray. But I've been watching like Stingray and Airwolf. Airwolf is obviously the best TV show that could ever be made. So we watched an Airwolf episode the other day, and the story was terrible. It was disjointed. It made no sense and all that. And you're like, Airwolf can do no wrong. I don't know why, right? So I'm never analyzed it, right? Now I've like got all these new tools, like upgrades, right? And I'm analyzing, and I'm like, oh, this is because you've got enchantment in several forms. And so when one of those enchantment forms fails, like story enchantment is one of the forms of enchantment,
you still have the helicopter enchantment. It's
right. The cool technology enchantment. Well, also the thing that Stingray and Airwolf have in common is, when you watch things on Prime, you can skip the intro. Not on those shows. You don't do that. The intro might be the best part. I love the intros of this because they're full of cool, flashy images very early, right? Now we've got oh no, that's Airwolf. Boom, 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 boom. And it's fast cut edits all over the place. So does Stingray. And I was like, wait a minute. I didn't notice this when I was watching this when I was young, right? So that's not new. And it's not necessarily harmful, although the new stuff probably is. They've got fantastic music. The music is so cool. Like, it's great. And then they've got this cool tech. Stingray drives a 65 Corvette Stingray. There isn't a cooler car than that, as everybody knows, right? Like, you couldn't build a cooler car. Why they haven't rebuilt it in electric, I'll never know, because if they did that, I would sell my house to buy one of those. I would be like, I hate electric cars. I'll buy two. Like, no way. You couldn't prevent me from getting one of those. It would be impossible. So, an Airwolf is just the coolest helicopter that could ever exist, obviously. And and so you don't mind the dumb story of the airliner put 100 feet on the ocean bottom, and the criminals thinking that, well, because no one can find this, they can't find us when they pay the $50 million ransom. I'm like, they'll never link it back to us. I'm like, I don't know how you think that's true, but that's interesting. It's a terrible story. Still love it. Would watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't need to, but would.
It's kind of a Spock's brain moment. You remember
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Star Trek episode Spock's Brain?
Yeah, yeah.
That was just, yeah, yeah. You still like the show, but that was
Yeah.
deeply silly.
Right, right, right. Well, yeah, and that's another one. I mean, Nichelle Nichols bursts in and, in the classic Star Trek days, burst into Roddenberry's office and go, I know what you're doing. And Roddenberry's just looking at her like, what? And she goes, you're writing moral plays. And he doesn't say a word. It's like, because that's what he was doing.
Well, it was the style at the time, right? The Twilight
what-
Zone was doing that all over the place.
To some extent, yeah, that's what they were copying. I think the problem is people don't know what was being copied and what wasn't, and so they don't have a good sense for where these things were coming from. So I was talking
Well,
with
Twilight
Ixon
Zone's
earlier,
definitely earlier than Star Trek, so
right?
jot that down.
But I was talking to Ixon earlier, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I watched Seven Samurai. Do you know how many movies are based on Seven Samurai?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like a good 30% of all of them or something, right? Like they all took from Seven Samurai because it's such a quintessentially cool story. And yeah, and people don't know that. And so they don't understand the art in the way the artists do, right? They don't get a sense for these things because they don't know what was being copied. So like Clockwork Orange, and I only knew this because Jesse bought me a copy of the book, and the book contains this very long like introduction to the book and why and how it was written and what was going on. But it's all basically copying Shakespeare's Seven Stages of Man, which of course I knew nothing about because I despise Shakespeare with a blinding passion, and I've only read one thing. And so I was like, what? Seven Stages of Man? What? And then the layout of the book is in sevens.
That's just like a monologue. The Seven Stages of Man. That's just like a monologue from. Isn't that from As You Like It?
No idea. Didn't read. Did not read.
Two
iambic pentameter did not read instead of too long did not read, but also too long did not read.
Maybe you could just get a large language model to turn it into a comic book for you so you could read it.
No, I don't read that stuff. I very much like with the ancient Greek philosophers have decided that stuff is all derivable because they derived it, and therefore you don't need to read their stuff. But everyone else has decided to take a different path called let's complexify everything and call it new and say we can't do without our new version of it. It's like, I don't think that could be true because that's backwards, but whatever. You guys do you. I'll just observe the world and be right all the time and annoy everybody. It's fine. I don't need your books. It's perfect.
Ixon thinks I'm right about something, but I don't know what it is. So, but I'm happy to be right.
No, the seven stages of man.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
but the story in Clockwork Orange is a story of the seven stages of man. But the physical number of chapters and how they're broken out and how the story is told is also broken out in the Seven Stages of Man. So it's this layered, but no one but a literary guy's ever going to notice that ever, ever. Like I read the whole stupid thing and it was stupid. And like, I get it. And then of course, famously he panicked because Burgess is apparently just really retarded person. Not only did he write the book to make money, but he panicked and misconstrued something that was said, and they dropped the last chapter from the American printing. And then, of course, the movie was based on the American copy because Kubrick was in America, right? And so when you read the story about how the book was written, you just find out it's always for money. And that compromises the story so severely that when you read the story, you kind of realize like, this isn't right. It's not a good story because it doesn't match things in the real world, despite it being like taken from an experience that he actually had. Right. And so at the same time, it's this bizarre psychological, trauma that he's trying to work out in the story. And so it just creates a big mess. And then people like that because you can project into it. So people love it. And I'm like, this is actual trash in every sense of the word. Because the real tragedy of Clockwork Orange, if you read the text, is you can tell he knows how to write and that he ain't doing it. And it's like, oh, there's nothing worse. There's nothing. I used to see that in programming all the time. You'd see somebody like do all this clever stuff, and that, clearly they have a real grasp for software engineering and the math behind it and the theory behind information processing and the whole 9 yards, right? And the way they put together their software, it's terrible. And so they do all these really clever things, and it doesn't work because it's in this bad frame, and it all just ends up being garbage. And that's like one of the problems with Clockwork Orange. And it's all a lack of final cause, right? Or a poor final cause in that case, because he wrote the book for money, and then he compromised on the book for money, and then he compromised on the movie for money, right? And it's like, well, then you're not going to have good art. And he's clearly capable of doing good art. I mean, Shakespeare's 7 Stages of Man, and you put that in a book and you encoded it in the chapters, and that's a lot of work. Like, that's amazing. And he can probably do that like without thinking about it or something, because there's a bunch of stuff like I can debug software without thinking about it. People are always like, well, what? How did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just do it. It was not a big, I don't care how I do it. What does it make? It's right. So who cares? So, but it's a shame when you see somebody who has the talent and skill and they can't implement, maybe because they're busy overthinking things, or they're looking towards materialist goals or some other reason. It's just sad. And I think that's part of, where religion of the day stuff comes from. I mean, when you get far enough out from Alfred Hitchcock, you get bad movies like Knives Out. The first Knives Out movie was actually interesting enough, but after that, it goes straight downhill. And why not? I mean, they're not copying the greats. They're trying to create their own thing, and they're bad at it because almost everybody is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Wondering how, like, can we set the clock on how long it's going to be before we have the first major release movie that's entirely generated by AI? Like, I think that's coming.
Yeah, but it won't be any good and no one will watch it. So,
well, yeah, but like, somebody's going to try it. Somebody's going to try it.
Oh, people are already trying it. They've been failing at that for 3 years, but they're still trying. I've seen partial efforts. It's just that it always breaks down because there's lots of technical reasons. But roughly speaking, you have to be able to write well, right? And then by write well, I mean tell a good enough story. And actually, someone I know, Hollis Robbins, she's on Twitter at Anecdotal. Hollis knows me, by the way, from Clubhouse. So she's a fan. She just wrote an article about like people don't know how to write paragraphs. And this is how you can tell LLM wrote something every single time, because LLMs can't write paragraphs at all. You know who else can't write paragraphs? George R.R. Martin. Cannot write a paragraph to save his ever living. He's just a terrible writer. Like, everything about him is terrible writing. And I'm always like, yeah, well, this is 0% surprising. I mean, he breaks grammatical rules. It's garbage. It's garbage. Not when you're supposed to, right? Like, and that is the key. I like that you pointed that out, right? Like the person that knows what they're doing is the person that knows when to break the rules and when to apply the rules and when not to. Like in programming, novices are not supposed to use go-tos ever. Whatever your jump instructions, whatever your equivalent to go-to is, you're not supposed to use that. You're supposed to cleanly exit your functions and blah, 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 blah. The reason why they teach it that way in that order is because you first need to learn to program in a structured way before you can program in a way that has exceptions, proper exceptions to the structures. Well, the side effect of teaching that way without the nuance of, well, at a certain point, you're supposed to graduate out of that rule and just use go-tos wisely, is you get what are called stack traces or log files that are just huge because they're trying to find the bug. And it's like, yeah, but actually you've introduced a bug by not just using a go-to at a critical point to bypass unrolling a bunch of function calls that don't need to be unrolled. And oddly, a lot of that happens in error correct error conditions. So actually, you can bypass these errors entirely if you just use gotos in the right place, because a lot of them are caused by the loop unrolls. And a lot of people don't know that. And fair enough, that's a top 1% programmer thing at this point, I think, which is too bad. So you have to know why the rules are there and when they no longer apply and when to break them. Those are 3 different things. And nobody even knows what they are. Everyone's legalistic. They're doing this video game reality. So they think, oh, always the price of oil is stable everywhere. And it's like, there are multiple oil markets in North America where the price per barrel is different, because it just turns out that oil has different qualities, and the higher quality the oil, the less it needs to be refined. And that oil's worth more because it needs to be refined less. And therefore, not only can it get to market quicker, but it's also cheaper to get it refined into whatever you want, because oil is not one thing, right? It can be used in all kinds of things. And so if you don't even understand that nuance, you probably shouldn't be commenting on the price of oil or how the commodities work in general, or really anything that involves economics. You're probably out of that game. I'm not in that game. I barely understand that much. So I'm grateful to know, don't step in that hole. You ain't coming out of that hole. Don't go there. So
It's like another argument against Twitter, because somebody could say that at a bar and it'd be like, well, we're at a bar, like who cares?
Well, that's the problem with the platforms, is the platforms just introduce everybody to everybody else. And all you find out is that you're not the smartest guy in the room on the thing you used to be. And in fact, you're not the smartest guy in the room on anything. And then like, oh, that was really healthy for you, right? Before you could be the smartest guy in the room. Now you can't be the smartest guy in the room because the room's too damn big. And the smartest guy in the room will hunt you down just to embarrass you publicly because he can, because it gets points on the platform. It's like, it's the worst possible scenario.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you can just opt out. You can just not have a Twitter account. The whole thing will die without human attention. It's just
that's
an option. That's an option.
Human attention. It's all human attention.
Yeah.
Technology is not material, and I just recorded a video on that. So
yeah, well, it's really simple, right? You can have your website running on the nicest AMD EPYC CPUs with 128 gigabytes of error correcting RAM, running super fast. You could have the fastest PCIe Gen 5 storage. You could have like multiple redundant backups. But if nobody puts when the parish picnic's happening on the website and like doesn't update it for 3 years, it doesn't matter what hardware it's running on, right? Like the human being that should care about this, if they don't care about it, website's crap. Unless all you're doing is displaying static information that doesn't change, right? So dateandtime.org, where we've got, the orbit of the sun and sunrise and sunset, that could be a pretty static website right there, because we've had these calculations done to a very high degree of precision since the 16th century. And, maybe we've added a little bit of precision since then, but not a lot. So
not enough
that's
to
pretty
matter.
good. But like a parish website, if somebody isn't updating that and making sure that, at least this is what you do. Here's the secret Catholic trick. If you want to know what's going on at a particular parish, you don't look at the website, except to go find the weekly bulletin. And then you click on the PDF of the weekly bulletin, and that tells you what's actually going on. Right? So just make sure, remember that. If you ever need to figure out what's going on at a Catholic parish, the PDF of the weekly bulletin on the website, that's where all the information is. Guess what? It's updated by a human being every Sunday.
That is perfect. And then all you need to do is get Cloud Code, make it time to read the weekly bulletin when it comes out, and turn anything time dependent into a notification on the website. And then update your email list and email everybody about it.
It's a lot easier to just look at the bulletin and find the information you need rather than have Claude do it. Who's Claude?
No, Claude would put it on the website for you, and then you could just go to the website. and you would need the bulletin, and then you'd miss all the good information in favor of the events. It would be great.
Yeah. So I'm just making notes.
Making notes. You could
Making
do all
notes.
of that with Claude.
I'm making notes, and then I'll remember what to rename the live stream.
Oh, excellent. That's a good idea.
What are
I
you gonna-
like that you rename the live streams. That's great.
What are you going to rename it to?
Oh, so if you look through the archive, it'll. So right now it says Monday Night Open Mic, and then when I rename it, it'll be like Open Mic, Strange Inversion, Science and Free Will, Websites and Attention. You know, just to like give them a little bit of flavor and a little bit of character, because otherwise it's just a couple of bald guys talking for 2 hours, and if you don't have anything to distinguish it, okay, well you're gracing us with your face today, Kurt. Thank you.
Yeah, but
Just
I'm not
wait
bald.
10 years and see what happens to you.
Maybe we'll see.
Angry bald men yelling at young men with hair. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a better title right there. That's yeah. Well, it's good that you do that. I mean, it helps people to know where to look and when, and taking
Well,
notes is always such a good practice.
Yeah.
There's also I am curious, have you ever considered putting timestamps on the video for like this discussion points?
Well, I don't think that's worth quite that much effort. And I think I've looked back at some of my videos. I think YouTube's done that for me automatically.
Yeah, it might be. You can do it, Kirk. You can just watch the videos, get all the timestamps, send them to Father Eric. He'll load them up in the system anytime you want, buddy.
Yeah, but sometimes we have really short topics. It'd be irritating to something we talked about for 30 seconds and then moved on. And you get into some classification problems. And
yeah, like when I entertained some postmodern nonsense and you shut me down.
Yep. Which is the proper order of nature. So, I'm
Yeah,
glad that you acknowledge that.
And I love you guys. I love you guys for keeping me sane. It's a nice even online community has some value. Not a substitute for in-person community, of course.
Yes. That is true. We like having you around, Kirk. I let you on, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could just put it into the comment, all the timestamps, and that could be your reward. Would be great in heaven, maybe. For doing all that unpaid labor right there.
I did have another question about Thomistic theology, but unless you guys have any other topic that you guys want to cover, because
I think we about exhausted websites and attention and all that.
So the thing I wouldn't correct me if I'm mistaken, but my understanding is that Aquinas and Aristotle believe that all knowledge begins with the senses, correct?
It begins with the senses.
Yes.
And this is a rule that applies to human beings. So, angels have a different way of knowing, and God has a different way of knowing. So as long as you've got like that, this is how human beings come to know things. Yeah. And then it doesn't end at the senses, though. The idea is that through the senses, you can get at the intelligible patterns behind the phenomenon, and your soul, or the passive intellect, as Aristotle calls it, actually takes on the form of whatever it is that you're observing, and that's how you get the knowledge and the reality out of that.
Yeah. Well, basically, so I posted in chat if you want to read into it. I was curious how they would reconcile that with this modern finding in neuroscience known as the free energy principle. I heard this from an interview between Jordan Peterson and Carl Friston. And basically what the idea is that instead of passively perceiving the external world, our mind constructs an image of the external world to minimize the difference between expectation and future perceptions.
Yeah, I wonder if they're not going about things a little bit backwards. Where they're starting off like, well, human brains are like computers, and therefore, this is how we would program a computer to do this. Um,
Yep.
and
Well, and
I
it's also energy as God, because it's all middle out thinking, right? It doesn't start at the beginning. But there's no possible way that anybody's coming up with anything that would refute all knowledge begins with the senses. Like that. And it's interesting, Father, because your description exactly matches our knowledge engine model that we modified from Vervaeke's incorrect 4Ps. So that's interesting that we got it pretty close. That's
yeah.
great. Good
And
news.
it's there's probably something something to their theory, where we could look at how human beings form habits, right? And habits that relate to like in my bedroom, I can navigate in the dark at night when I need to use the bathroom or something like that. And it's like it's not a perfect navigation, it's definitely slower, but I just have this sense of my room, and like you get used to, certain sounds, right? Like the air conditioner pops on, that doesn't bother you. But like other sounds, like if somebody's talking outside the house, which happens often because we're in downtown Fargo, that can disturb me much more easily, right? So like there is a certain amount where these habits that we form can operate with certain expectations, and it can be difficult to see something if it's not all that obvious. If you're just accustomed to not looking at it, so there could be like a certain amount of that, but if I act like that's the whole of it, it's like that's probably not the whole of it. Like that's not
It's
how
small.
all of this works.
It's a
Yeah.
small part.
Well,
It just has utility because it turns out that no one thinks about managing energy because we've spent decades managing time. And as a person with an illness, I can tell you, no, you manage energy. I don't manage my time at all. I can't. I have to manage my energy. That's what I have to do. So that's why Friston sounds much smarter than he is, and also why this sounds so much more reasonable. It's just because people haven't thought about managing energy. And when you think about managing energy, a bunch of new things occur to you, and a bunch of new things are possible. And it's a newer perspective, but it hardly encompasses more than a tiny percentage of what you need to know to understand anything interesting about the world. But it is super helpful.
yeah, I don't think for Friston the point about free energy is that it's habits. It's somebody saying it's that the perception is like sort of a priori constructing a vision of the world based on minimization of difference between
Well,
expectation and perception.
your habits 100. So I should probably explain a little bit what Aquinas means by habits, because it's a very rich part of his thought. It comes from the word habeo habere, which means to have or to hold on to. Um, and so you don't get this sense of like, Father Eric wakes up in the morning, uses the bathroom, brushes his teeth, and then goes downstairs, makes a cup of coffee, and goes into the chapel. Like that's not the sense of that. Like habits are things that inhabit you. Like qualities that are either just there, or that you can cultivate and build up, right? And that includes like qualities of perception. So if you're like brand new at driving, and like you're starting off in the parking lot with a driver instructor next to you, you're probably like you don't know what sensations even in your body to focus on, and so you're focusing on, you can't focus your attention, right? um, and so, these habits do have an effect on perception. And as you practice driving, as you get accustomed to, feeling the steering wheel, feeling the gas pedal, feeling the brake pedal, reading traffic signs, controlling the vehicle, your ability to focus on relevant information and to disregard irrelevant information, like it increases. And so these habits can actually have a very big impact on your perception in an Aristotelian Thomistic framework there. So when I say habits, I mean more than just the, this is what I do when I get out of bed in the morning to get ready for the day. I mean it in kind of the Aristotelian sense. And I have to remember that, like, not everybody studied Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, which is something that Bishop Barron forgot when he was talking to Peterson the first time, and just said, well, man's end is happiness, and it's like, well, okay, remember, Aristotle sends a whole book, defining that, and translating happiness for eudaimonia, like that's, that's a debatable translation right there. So all of that to say, I still stand by my the habits are all over the place. It can be a lot of different things. So it's a very broad category when it's used in a Thomistic setting.
But even outside of that, Father, a habit would be a pattern that reduces your total energy usage as a human. And so
that's one of the things it could be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it would do that automatically. Mm-hmm. And so the brain would preference patterns, especially over time, over exploration. But because these nitwits, and they're all nitwits, I'm sorry, they're just all nitwits. This with big vocabulary, that is the problem. They don't think in terms of exploratory. Sometimes they use play, but they don't use that correctly, because exploratory is the right word, versus this habitual patterning approach. And they don't talk about the balance of those two things. And probably the best and only way to get there would be, to quote Jonathan Peugeot, who won't mind, go to church, because that's where you get, you get both of those things in the non-material realm, we'll call it. Mm-hmm. And that's why that's important. And of course, it's not going to work as well if you can't inform the world poetically, which is why you should go to Navigating Patterns and look at the knowledge engine model, and you'll understand all this stuff better. And there are practices. Although I'm thinking of writing a book on practices. We got to get the manners book done. I think I'm going to write a book on practices after that. And yeah, Ixnon is right, by the way. That is an important point, that you have to develop good habits or else you fall into bad ones. Right, because Kristen is partly correct, which is like nitwits are most dangerous when they have one correct point, right? You need habits. You will fall into them. Everyone goes, NPCs are bad. And I'm like, you guys play way too many video games. You will be an NPC in most of the things that you interact with in life. And that's actually a good thing, because it just makes life so much easier than trying to do everything yourself.
Like when I was getting, I had to get my tire patched today because I had a flat tire, and it's like, I was a very uninteresting customer. I brought in a flat tire and they're running on the spare to the tire shop and said, hey, can you patch this? And they're like, sure. And they're like, do you have a place where I can sit? Right over there, like total NPC behavior right there. Thanks be to God, And the only real agency I exercised in there is I was the only one in the waiting room. So I muted the TV so I could read in peace, Excellent. If somebody else had been in the waiting room and they were watching the TV, I would have put up with it. But I was the only one in there. Mute the TV,
Nice. No, I used to go and take in my broken whatever in my car, and my buddy would go, well, the blah, blah, blah wrenches are over there. And I'd be like, well, I realize that I can fix everything on this car. Like, I actually do know all the parts, but I ain't doing it. Like, you guys are much better at it. So you do it. And there's things I can't do. Like, I still can't balance tires. Like, I know how. I'm just not that good at it. And it's his machine. Let him do it. So I'd fight with him about that. He'd yell at me, and then I'd be like, how's the computer? And then he'd realize what that threat meant. And then he'd go and fix my car. That's usually how that works.
That's right. Yeah. Nope. $35 too. I thought I was going to get, but they patched the tire for $35. Took about half an hour. I was like, I'm going to give. It's a local chain, so I can't give them a recommendation. This channel, but anybody in person that needs tire work, Okay, or
NPC.
cargo.
NPC, awesome. That's what that is. $35. That's awesome.
Yeah. But so Father, so basically the idea is that there's a sense of truth for, first instance, free energy principle that in the context of habits can affect perception, but he's wrong to say that this means that there's knowledge which begins outside of perception.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, like, the human beings do have like a certain constraint on them, and Aquinas talks about trying to account for how moral law is universal across cultures, at least in the very basic forms. Like certain things, no culture has ever held up as good, and other things have always been considered good. Any stable culture that's actually capable of propagating itself, versus like a den of thieves where they fall apart after 6 months because they don't have a strong center in there. This sense that there's a certain attunement of human things. Like it's sort of like you could begin with the senses and understand that, like our eyes all see the visible light spectrum, and maybe there's a little bit of gray at the edges, but we all have that. We all have sensations of touch, taste, and smell, and then certain appetites and bodily needs and impulses that are going to draw us towards a lot of the same things. It's not. I don't think that's correct to talk about that in terms of knowledge, right? But that does condition and constrain the sort of experiences and knowledge that we'll be able to develop, while still including a vast amount of variety of different people, temperaments, experiences, all of that, because there's still plenty of variety even within what we could call the universal constraints there. So maybe those universal constraints on what it means to be a human being will condition the kind of knowledge that a human being can have.
Yeah.
But it all still comes through the senses.
Yeah, the only thing, Father, is while that's fine, I guess my question would be, what is the Aristotelian / Thomas Aquinas argument for that proposition that all knowledge begins with the senses? Like, what is a counter argument to the idea that there are a priori forms of knowledge?
I mean, it might even just be a definitional, like a trouble with the definition of the word there, because for them, knowledge always implies like a contact with reality.
Experience.
And it's like, how do you ever have knowledge without having any kind of contact with reality? Your soul having contact with reality there, or experience.
It's all experience based for the Greeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So at a certain point, it's sort of like a definitional thing. It's like, oh, you managed to have contact with reality without having contact with it. It's like, well, no, you didn't. That violates the principle of non-contradiction. So
Right.
Go ahead and try again. So that's, I mean, that's like, it's just sort of the you'd have to start arguing with what I think are some pretty basic and solid axioms that the whole system's built on, and
yeah. Well, you have to deny, to RJ's excellent point, you have to deny observation flat out to make these kinds of arguments. But if you don't deny observation and experience and the fact that you are a being with senses, then these arguments immediately don't make any sense. And that's because they're done by people who don't make any sense. And they're trying to prove something that wouldn't be provable even if they were right. There would be no way to prove these ridiculous things.
Well, so the way that in the Critique of Purism that Kant lays out for the a priori knowledge is that basically you have these formal conditions for a sensible experience, and these formal conditions for sensible experience lead to synthetic a priori judgments for how we organize sense experience into perception through the synthesis of the forms of intuition with the categories of the understanding.
But that's
Yeah,
impossible, and Kant is wrong. Like, I don't
yeah,
understand. Like,
yeah.
this isn't that hard. It's all self-reference gobbledygook.
Yeah, so Kant, he ends up getting in trouble, right? Because he makes causality one of the categories for understanding, and then like the second you do that, you've actually cut the intellect off from reality because there's no way for the reality to have any cause causal relationship with the intellect. And so he'll say, well, it's the our sensations are grounded in reality. Okay, that just sounds like a different word for causality right there. So you've got to mess it up. So that's why I've just got no patience with this. And the way this was explained to me in seminary, maybe you can benefit from it. Is that there was a shift in the way that people viewed the world from the ancient and medieval times. By the time you got to Descartes, right?
Right.
And the shift was explained this way. You can imagine a model of the solar system. Uh, in the ancient and medieval model, reality was at the center. It had the gravitational pull on it, and then the intellect was orbiting around reality, right? And like trying to observe that and get into that. When you get to this so-called modern shift, you have the human intellect at the center of everything and reality orbiting around that. And that's why it all just like devolves into self-referential madness right there. Um, whereas
Wait,
you could just, you could just say that's not how things work. And you could just be
but
happy and
but it's
normal.
it's unprovable, right? As a human being, and everybody you're going to quote or talk to or follow the intellect of was or is a human being. For a human being to do an argument that involves something that isn't involving the intellect and the senses doesn't make any sense because they are inside those things. So the minute you're inside something, making an inference about something outside of the thing you're in, it can never be correct enough, ever. It's that simple. It devolves into self-reference because you're the smaller thing and you're trapped in the thing that you are. And so you can't say things like, well, I know what's going through the minds of these 40 people. You cannot know such a thing. It's not possible. And even if you got it right, there'd be no way to validate that you got it right. It would be impossible to do that. Since you are trapped by your senses, by definition, making comments about how your senses work and where your senses work and when they do and don't apply can never be made any sense of consistently and reliably by anybody because they're all trapped in their senses and the person that made the statement is trapped in their senses. So to work outside of that frame of senses and intellect is an error in logic. It is logically, all of those formulations are logically inconsistent because they're making assumptions that are impossible to prove or disprove. And that's why there's so many of them. That's why you can jump from Friston to Immanuel Kant and over to quantum physics, because none of them will ever have more or less evidence for or against them relative to the others, which is all going to be zero. Zero evidence for, zero evidence against, because they're nonsensical. They're statements about things that the people making the statements do not and never could have access to. It's that simple. This isn't hard. And it wouldn't help you if you had access to it anyway, because you ain't changing something that big. It's not going to change. You still have to deal with it, whether you know why it works that way or not. I know how watches work, mechanical watches. That doesn't do me any good. Like it does no good at all.
I see. So the problem with Kant is that basically he'd have to get outside of the senses to prove that the senses don't perceive the external world. And the problem with Friston is the same problem with Kant, and you can't, and he's working backwards from neuroscience when he should be starting with Aristotelian axioms.
Yeah,
And
that's the
Aristotelian
problem with all of
axioms
them, Kirk. All
are,
of them.
are just like this. It's like, yeah, there's a world out there, and your senses have a certain type of contact with it. And if you're, careful enough and have enough experience, you can have true knowledge of it. It's just like, and then we work from there. How does the knowledge work? Well, you've got the senses, and then you got the common sense, which gives you the percept, and then the active intellect impresses that on the passive intellect, and you get the form of it, and then you've got a pattern in your head, and bada bing, bada, like that's as complicated as it gets. So yeah, and then you can just not worry about these things, and then you can go down to the dance hall, Kirk, and then you could just dance with a girl, and that would be a lot more useful. So
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is the reason that I've become interested in some of these philosophical things is, especially with my interest in science, is that basically I've heard that a lot of modern science comes from this I don't want to say postmodern, but you can say this, these post-Aristotelian traditions of like quantum physics and stuff. I've heard that they basically came.
yeah, and then there's also like all of the people who did the really important work would at least acknowledge God, like so. It's Mark rings this bell over and over again. We haven't had any major breakthroughs in physics for decades now, coming up on a century, and it's like, oh wow, and then like Isaac Newton, Kepler, Gregor Mendel, Albert Einstein, they all were like, no, we're not the thing at the center here, right? We're just like figuring out the patterns of how this thing that's bigger than us works, and parallel to that, you have all of the ridiculous German idealists, and they're the ones who are like getting stuck inside their head and incapable of getting out of it, and just writing volumes upon volumes upon volumes of the most unreadable technical gobbledygook that provides no value whatsoever to the world, and it's like, yeah, it just seems really obvious to me that when we stopped worshiping God and revering His commandments, that's when things really started to go off, and kind of the thread that we were pulling on was pulled out of our hands. And
Yeah, that makes sense. And the only thing is, though, I specifically was referring to the idea I've heard that like people like Einstein and Bohr and Heisenberg were readers of Schopenhauer and Kant and the German tradition, generally speaking. Like the theoretical physics came out of Germany, which was the home of like.
I mean, do you really think so? Like maybe they were reading all of this, awful garbage, but it didn't really affect them that much because they like continued to like, if you were actually take some of these, especially like Schopenhauer, like take him seriously, then like you should just be depressed and anguished all the time if you're gonna like actually embody that.
Right.
And maybe they were, but like they still showed up to work and like did some really cool science experiments that were still, fun to read about and listen to. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see, if that was. I don't think that was actually, even if they said that's what they were up to. Like that wasn't what they were actually up to. What they were actually up to was trying to one up each other and who could have the best mathematical model and the best theory. Like that's.
Well, but Einstein famously said, "God does not place dice with the universe." Okay, that destroys all the German philosophers because all of them are anti-God, all of them. So clearly, if Einstein said that publicly and stood by it, which he did, he wasn't following those idiots because they're all idiots. That nothing good came out of Germany or France with respect to philosophy ever. There might be one exception in France, but that's about it. And that's all you need to know. Like you can skip over all that, and so that's important. But Father, just to push back on your argument, I mean, look, I mean, you can stay trapped reading, German philosophers, at home alone. And that's a lot safer than being around scary girls that might dance with you and not knowing what to do. So, it's got its upsides.
Yeah, we got. I mean, women are actually kind of terrifying, so you got
That's
to
what
be
Peterson
careful.
says.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not wrong. And
Well, look,
and is that what you're doing when you're reading German? The depressed couldn't get a date German philosophers. Huh. You want to follow them? They all had miserable lives, every single one of them. Horrific train wreck lives. Maybe their philosophies are bad if they're horrific train wreck life creating philosophies, which sample of one I know, but also sample of the guy with the idea, probably pretty accurate.
Meanwhile, Plato and Aristotle went to the gym every day.
There you go.
Yeah, I will say in terms of practical utility, I mean, to be fair, there were the Americans, James, right? They were big on action, and they were not exactly Aristotelian to my understanding. But you're right that in terms of his story, other than the Americans, the most practical philosophers are the ancient Greeks.
Yeah, and the pragmatists bother me less than most anybody else because they're not getting stuck in their heads or coming up with these grand theories. They do sometimes the pragmatists do get in a little bit of trouble with final causality. So, like, why should I be pragmatic? And then, maybe they've actually got a good religious explanation, and the pragmatism is just something attached to it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's less bad than the critique of pure reason and the critique of practical reason, and the endless of the production of much books comes great weariness. I didn't quite get that quote right, but it's from the book of Ecclesiastes, which is much shorter than the critique of pure reason and far more valuable. So, and more readable too. Oh man, it's from that book, Mark. What's it called?
I don't know.
It's got the real short name.
Short name, no author. How are you supposed to remember that? I don't understand. How could anybody remember that? It's just not enough stickiness in the head.
Anyway. Yeah. So anyway, Thomas Aquinas wins, Nietzsche loses, and pick your side.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's been it. I do think I am optimistic for the future of religiosity. I do think we are returning to God as a culture.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really funny line in The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, describing the protagonist of the novel. It's a wild novel. You should try reading it. It's a lot of fun, and like all of Chesterton novels, like he couldn't end a novel without having a massive like flight of incomprehensible imagination. But he was describing the protagonist of The Man Who Was Thursday, and it's like his father was a free thinker, and his mother was a theosophist, and he rebelled against them back into the only rebellion possible, that being sanity, and decided to become a conservative. And then he joins the philosophical secret police, and that's where the story begins, and it goes all sorts of wonderful places. I should read that one again. It's not that long. It's incredibly action packed and just delightful.
The philosophical secret police. I love it.
It's amazing. It's an amazing book. He wrote it even before he became a Christian. Although it wasn't long after he had written it that he became a Christian. So, it was probably a part of the process.
Probably. Well, that's the other thing that people don't realize about books is usually they're just people working out their psychological problems. That's so far all the philosophers when anybody ever like gets into a bind with them and I start looking into their biographies, I'm like, well, of course, this is totally predictable. That this is how they grew up from their philosophy, because they're just working out their trauma. And they take their trauma, whatever happened to them, maybe daddy was mean to them or something, and they pretend like that happened at a cultural level, which is inappropriate use of scaling, right? And then they try to solve it, not with they don't solve it, right? They try to give an excuse for everybody else to solve it for them because they're lazy and useless and, not good, right? Like, when there's a problem in my life, I just solve it. I don't go write a book about it and, blame everybody else and say why everybody else should solve it. Like, I don't have a book about everybody should come to my yard and help me, clear the land. I'm just clearing the land. Like, it's fine. It's going to take forever, but whatever, I'll do it, So these people are just, lazy and feckless. And instead of dealing with their problems like a normal people, they invent philosophies as a way of addressing their own personal private issues.
So, I mean, G.K. Chesterton was a writer. That's how he made money. And so he wrote a novel, and, maybe he was, kind of working out some of his personal problems, but then he did go fix it by first becoming an Anglican and then becoming a Catholic. And that fixed a bunch of things for him. So I'm not sure who you're talking about when you're doing that, but it's not my man Gilbert Keith. You're talking about somebody else, obviously.
There's lots of different.
He just went and he's a journalist and a novelist, right? I've never ranked him as a philosopher, and so I do think there's a connection between the kinds of stories he was reading, what he was experiencing. Duh, like.
Right.
Come on, man. Like, you have to have some kind of contact with something if you're going to write about it. If I was going to write a story set in 13th century Bavaria, I would at least need to do some historical reading of it. And what would be also very useful would be to go visit a castle and a vineyard and something like that, So obviously,
that's how they're full of it, right? Because Nietzsche writes about things that couldn't have happened and didn't happen. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe if you label it science fiction and call it a day or something, but you labeled it philosophy and it's all fantasy. So
right, whereas Chesterton wrote about London all the time. So
and America, that his little trip to America was interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Super interesting. I haven't finished it yet. I will though. I haven't finished Religion of the Day yet either. I'm nibbling away. When I get
what you need to do is you just need to have a book club to force you to read it.
That's probably going to be the way it goes. We're going to do movie club next. I might do another book club. I'm going to do a book club on that book. It's too small. We do big book clubs. We do like 40 episode book clubs. That's what we do. We do on my channel.
A 40 episode book club somehow on the language of creation.
I know.
Which I understood just by looking at the pictures. Like, God bless you, Mark. God bless you. I don't know how you go 40 episodes on that.
I don't know how we did either. And I don't know how we didn't notice until episode 39, just before it started. And we were like, we're going to end this, not in this episode, but in the next one. That's going to be 40. What happened? How did this occur? What a strange number to end a book club on biblical symbolism with by accident. Very weird.
You think there are accidents?
There are definitely. I'm trying to be as secular as I can, so it's got to be accidents.
How silly.
Synchronicity. Well, Father, I keep trying to show this to you. Like, it's all about the dog-headed.
I actually think it's all about Jesus Christ.
But it's not. This is we're coming with metal. What are you going to do? You guys better work this out. I saw. So I went to a talk that Jonathan Majot gave, and Richard Rowland was there, and he picked up the book. I gave him a bunch of copies. Here, have some dog-headed books, Richard. So I gave him the quick overview of the story. Like, no, we did this for a reason. We're trying to get in your club. Please love us. We'll see if it works.
Well, Father Flanagan was declared venerable by Pope Leo.
Who's
So you
that?
know who? Oh, he was the founder of Boys Town in Omaha. So basically,
Oh,
one of the better run orphanages that have ever existed. And
I've heard of
when you
that one. Yeah.
yeah, when you're declared venerable, that means the Holy See has decided that you practice heroic virtue in your lifetime. And so that means that you're just two miracles away from canonization. So,
Oh,
so it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to see more American saints advancing towards sainthood, and it's like the time is right. The Catholic Church has been here long enough. We really need to start getting some serious local saints here. We can't have all the saints be over in Europe. And,
I
at least,
heard your boy Chesterton was. People were pushing for that one too. Have you
yeah,
heard that? That seems silly to
yeah.
me, but
I it's funny that you should say that because I've always I love Chesterton, right? Like I just enjoy reading him so much. It's been too long. I need to pick up some of his books again, but never thought heroic virtue out of him. Like some really good stuff, but not
well,
heroic virtue. And like one of the things,
on the basis of the improvement he made in other people's lives as the result of his writing. I was like, oh, is that a standard? I don't know. That's
it's
interesting.
not the classical standard. If
Mm,
if Papa Leo decides he's going to create a new category, then that's his business, not mine. But like he has a well documented, vice of gluttony, right? And like,
mm,
you know, he would joke about it with himself. And, but he was like, there's a reason he was the size he was, and it's because he kept on eating, in an era before all of the processed foods made that a lot easier. Although I'm sure they were just beginning, the industrialized food production. So as much as I love, G.K. Chesterton and enjoy his writings, like I've never seen the whole heroic virtue angle. Just because if you're deficient in one, like
mm.
to a fairly serious degree, then it's sort of like your total. If we were to put it into kind of a numeric framing, like your total virtue level is at the level of your lowest one,
Right.
right? And like that's your weak spot, and you know,
Lowest common denominator.
yeah, it's like that's it, and it ties in with some of the principles of discernment of spirits and spiritual warfare, that the devil's just always going to attack at the place where you're weakest, right? Because it's like, why would I attack the strong point? You know, it's always going to attack your weak spot there. So yeah, and I bet you some people in the Congregation for Causes of Saints have come to the same conclusion, and hopefully they do the right thing, because not everybody that you like reading needs to be a saint.
Can confirm.
Yeah. So
I don't think it would be good to make authors into saints on any basis of their writing, because I can't. Writing bad, burn all the books. Sorry, still there.
right. But like if they were a very holy person and also wrote books, like there's your
That would be
argument right there.
fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen any evidence of that from Chesterton.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he'd be I've never thought of him as my spiritual father. I've always thought of him as a spiritual drinking buddy.
I like that. Spiritual drinking buddy. That's great. That's great. My spiritual drinking buddy, GK
Whereas
Chesterton.
I could look at Fulton Sheen, Aquinas, Augustine, uh, Blessed Columba Marmion. Um, I can't remember the other guy's name, but like some of these guys that I've read, that like they've got a um, much more like grounded and like holy and encouraging. The way that their writing affects me, right? Like one that I've read over and over again is "The Priest Is Not His Own" by Venerable Fulton Sheen, soon to be Blessed Fulton Sheen. He's got a miracle, and he's going to be upgraded there. Like that one is just always is a continual inspiration for me when I'm reading it. Whereas like Chesterton is like really clever and oftentimes insightful, but it's not like personally, calling me on to greater things. Even when it's like pointing out, like, hey, all of these materialists are like, it's like they're trying to put the entire ocean inside their head, and it's not going to work, and they go mad. It's like mathematicians and he said mathematicians and chess players go mad while poets do not. Like those things are, it's just a useful pattern, but it's not like Fulton Sheen saying, look, if you're going to be a priest, you need to be ready to sacrifice, because Jesus our Lord was both priest and victim at the same time, and are you ready for that, Father? Oh man.
It's rough. Did
Yeah.
you see the Fulton Sheen clip on my Discord server from him with I think it's What's My Line or something? I forget the name of the show. It's an old show.
Yeah, I've been off Discord for Lent, so if it's been posted in the past 30 days or so, I
don't remember when it was posted, but it's on there. It's nice to see a big TV appearance and everything. Yeah.
Well, he was famously on TV,
I do not know. That is not something. In
Oh,
the
so I
spirit
mean,
of
it was
my-
before your time, but like he had a
Yeah.
prime time show on NBC in the 1950s, and he won an Emmy for it. So, he was there was things happening. He high profile converts and a Catholic moment.
Need more of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Need more confessions in the TV shows and stuff. What happened to all that? Why are we ceding ground over there, Catholics? What's
the
going
Catholics stopped running Hollywood. That's we didn't
Well,
have
get
Bing
on it.
Crosby starring in movies anymore as a priest. It's just
It's yeah. I don't know. It's too bad. We need more of that, not less.
okay. Well, I am not a Hollywood person. I am a Fargo, North Dakota person, and I'm going to do the Fargo things. And like I don't know if I could, in good conscience, recommend somebody go to Hollywood.
No, but you don't have to go to Hollywood to be on TV and do TV things. I mean, that was the beauty of the televangelists. They were setting up mini, studios all over the country in all kinds of states. I guess there's a big one in North Carolina, not too far from me.
And there's EWTN, but that's usually only Catholics watch that one. Although some people do get brought in by it. It's on cable. You would like Mother Angelica. She should have her cause advanced. You can.
Never heard of this person.
Well, she founded her own cable news station in the 1980s, and it was a big deal because at the time most Catholic publications were controlled by progressives, and it was just hard to get information around. And Mother Angelica was having none of that. There's this famous scene from her. There was this big kerfluffle at the World Youth Day in '91 or '92, where they had put on Stations of the Cross, and they had a woman playing Jesus, and she just was like, no, this is nonsense. This is BS. I know exactly what you're doing. It's horrible. And I'm going to call you out on it. And she just like ranted for like 10 minutes straight on all of that. And it was just kind of like for anybody who was just tired of all of the Church of What's Happening Now stuff, it was just like this massive sigh of relief. And then a bunch of funding came in for the studio. And the production values went up. They could buy nicer equipment and get things done a little bit more professionally there. But just by putting that signal out there that like, hey, I'm not here for the nonsense. And if you come here, you're going to get the way things are supposed to be. So, Maybe I'll send you the famous Mother Angelica link, and I think you'll appreciate her as much as
Please.
I do. Yeah.
Please. Well, see, the Catholics need to be doing all this stuff now. There's a big hunger for it, and no one's out there giving it to the people who want it. So,
we've got some people out there.
There's a big gap for news. There's been a big gap for news for a while, and there were a couple people I tried to convince to fill it, and they could have, but they didn't do it. So,
you mean like not just like Catholic news, but like just a good news agency?
A good news agency, and if it just happened to be run by Catholics and had a Catholic slant, I don't think anybody would care at this point. I think that having a good news agent, like if it was run by Catholics, it would probably be on average good, as opposed to the random.
Because I know there's good Catholic news agencies, but
right. But if they're not doing the general news for the general public, then they're not outreach. It's not good work. It's internal work, which is necessary, but like the Catholics have never found the balance between not being evangelicals but also evangelizing correctly. Like they've never been able to get that correct for whatever reason. It seems obvious to me, but I guess it's not obvious to anybody over there.
Well, maybe you should pray that God will raise up saints. That
metal. We're coming with metal, Father.
Well, you should try praying. You should try praying instead.
We are praying, and we're still coming with metal. So you're not changing the metal part. You're gonna take Sally seriously. She's a next level artist on this topic for sure.
Well, I'm gonna go to the next level of my life, which is bed, because it's dark outside. So, thanks for joining us, all of you who in any way have participated. Remember to say your prayers and to get 8 hours of sleep every night. So good night, and God bless you all.
Good night, Father. God bless.